and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, Here am I. And he said, I am God, the God of thy father. Fear not to go down to Egypt, for I will there make of thee a great nation. So he goes to God. He makes the sacrifice first before he ever prays. There's some wisdom in that, isn't it? We need to give God praise. We need to give God glory. We need to give Him the sacrifices of praise before we start asking. I believe there's a key to praying right here. And you find it through the New Testament as well. When people are going to God and they're serious about finding an answer to God, they start with adoration and praise to God. And then they ask God the specific things that they're looking for, and God will give clear direction. I believe if you go and you acknowledge who God is, you're not just telling God, God already knows what you think. You're reminding yourself. You're praising God. You're reminding yourself of who you're talking to. You're not just talking willy-nilly. You're talking to God Almighty. Agreed? Yes, sir.
It's also a time of want. This man is in 2 years of famine.
Yes.
His herds have been decreased, just like around here. When there's a drought, there's nothing to feed the animals. They're sold.
Right.
And so he's in want. He took all that he had, but he's got a lot less now than he had 2 or 3 years before.
That's right.
Because he's having to spend money, his cash, liquid assets on food.
Right.
That's what brought all this about.
That's right.
And his herds are down, and now he knows that God's leading him to a better place, a more prosperous place.
Amen.
And so he's worshiping the Lord, praising the Lord that God's directed him.
Amen. That's a very good point. So all that he had, so he bought the grain, right? But he brought it back. Some of it's for food for himself, some for his cattle, some's to plant. What's planted is just wasted because it's another drought. And so that leaves less for him, less for the animals. Now they had to send the boys back to buy more. So if you think about it, what he's given God is a greater sacrifice than what he ever gave God before. Because before was out of his abundance. This is out of his necessities of life. He's given God a sacrifice. That's important. And God honors that. God honors that sacrifice. That sacrifice, a sacrifice isn't just out of an abundance. A sacrifice is out of your lack. And so God knows that. Remember the little widow woman with 2 mites? It was all she had. And these people were putting in like what we'd call hundreds or thousands of dollars and making a big show of it. And what did Jesus say? She put in more than all of them. Less than a penny, but she put in more because it was out of her poverty she gave. And so he's given and God is honoring. Folks, I want you to know this. God honored because there's a purpose in this. So this doesn't mean that you go and you do and then God's going to immediately give you an answer. Don't think that way. This is prosperity gospel does that. Don't think that. If God wants to answer you, God will answer you. If God don't want to answer you, He's not going to answer you. Maybe it's a time of testing. Maybe it's a time to try your faith. Come on. I was listening many years ago to a guy preach from this chapter right here in one of those name it and claim it things. And he said, if you reach down deep in your bank account and you give it all to God, then God's going to answer your prayer. Not necessarily. There was a purpose in this much greater. Jacob's purpose in life was much greater than our purpose in life. God's no respecter of persons, but through His lineage is coming Jesus. I'd say that's a little bit more important than us. Right? And especially if we just want it for our abundance, right? All right, so let's keep going. So I will go down with thee into Egypt. God's making a promise of His provision, His protection, His very purposes. He's going to be with him. I am God, the God, I will go down to Egypt, and I will also surely bring thee up again. He's talking to him. I will bring thee up again. You're coming back up. Now, he's going to be dead, and his bones are coming up, but God made a promise, and God's going to see that promise through. Y'all get that? And his family is going to come back up. They are going to have that promised land. It's going to happen. We talked about that today through Joshua. And Joseph shall put his hand upon thine eyes. And Jacob rose up from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried Jacob, their father, and their little ones. See, he was so old he didn't walk. They just carried him down there. Age has its privileges. and their wives and their wagons, which Pharaoh had sent to carry him. That's important. Verse 5. Notice that. Remember last week we ended up with this. Pharaoh sent the wagons. Pharaoh sent the beasts of burden to bring them down, which shows you what poor condition the animals probably were in Israel, in the promised land, because they didn't have the wagons. They probably didn't have the animals to bring the whole family down into Egypt, right? And so Pharaoh took care of all of this. And they took their cattle and their goods, which they had gotten in the land of Canaan, and came into Egypt, Jacob and all his seed with him. His sons and his sons' sons with him, his daughters and his sons' daughters, and all his seed brought he with him into Egypt. And these are the names of the children of Israel. And so these are the tribes as they came, which came into Egypt. Jacob and his sons, Reuben, Jacob's firstborn. The sons of Reuben, Hanok and Phalu and Hezron and Carmi. And the sons of Simeon, Jemuel, Jamin and Ohad and Jachin and Zohar and Shaul, the son of the Canaanitish woman. Sounds like a band or something there, don't it? And the sons of Levi, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. And the sons of Judah, and Onan, and Shelah, and Pharez, and Zerah. But and Onan died in the land of Canaan. And the sons of Pharez were Hezron and Hamul. And the sons of Issachar, Tola, and Phuvah, and Job, and Shimron. And the sons of Zebulun, Sered, and Elon, and Jaleel. And these be the sons of Leah, which she bare unto Jacob in Padan Aram with his daughter Dinah. And the souls of his sons and his daughters were 33. And the sons of Gad, Ziphion, and Haggai, and Shunai, and Esbon, and Eri, and Arodi, and Areli. The sons of Asher, Jimnah, and Ishua, and Ishui, and Beriah, and Sarah, their sister. And the sons of Beriah, Heber, and Malchiel. Phooey. Don't you wish they were English people? These are the sons of Zilpah, whom Laban gave unto Leah his daughter, and these she bare unto Jacob, even 16 souls. And so notice he's dividing each of these families and giving the numbers of them, right? The sons of Rachel, Jacob's wife, Joseph and Benjamin. And unto Joseph in the land of Egypt were born Manasseh and Ephraim, which Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, bare unto him. And the sons of Benjamin were Bela and Becher and Ashbel, Gera, Naaman, Ehi, Rosh, Mupim, and Hupim. They must have been twins. Mupim and Hupim. And Ard. Mupim and Hupim and Ard. They're running out of names. Now, I meant to look all these up, but we wouldn't have had time to go through all these names. But I want you to do that sometime. Just go online. Hitchcock's Book of Bible Names is a great place to look. And you'll find what each of these names mean. And write the meaning of their names. And then when you read this story, read the meaning of their names instead of their name. And it'll show you the rest of the Bible. It shows you the story. It is absolutely amazing because everything God does, He does on purpose. You know that, right? And as you read these names, it shows the blessings, it shows the cursings, it shows the things that will befall them that are good, the things that befall them that are bad. It is just a tremendous story of the nation of Israel in these names of these patriarchs. These are the sons of Rachel, which were born unto Jacob. All the souls were 14. The sons of Dan, Husham. The sons of Naphtali, Jaziel, and Guni, and Jezer, and Shalom. And these are the sons of Bilhah, which Laban gave unto Rachel his daughter, and she bare these unto Jacob. All the souls were 7. And all the souls that came with Jacob into Egypt, which came out of his loins beside Jacob's wives, and all the souls were 66. That's 66. Now, when you add himself and you add Joseph and his kids, it's 70 souls that start in Egypt. And the sons of Joseph, which were born him in Egypt, were 2 souls. And all the souls of the house of Jacob, which came into Egypt, were 70. So 70 is what starts. Now they're going to come out a lot more. Yes, sir. Right.
He's going to put coins in your eyes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's telling Israel that
He-
I'll bring you up again, but it's going to be long.
Yep.
But you're going to die.
Yep. You're done for there, but I'll bring your old bones back up. Yep.
I wonder how he processed that.
Let's hope he has had a touch of senility. And he was, I believe when you get if it was a promise from God, it didn't really matter. Because that's not his resting place is in the Lord, isn't it? Yeah. But he wanted his bones to be there. Why do you reckon it was so important for him to be back up there? Who do you think he wanted his bones next to or with? Rachel. She's the only one he loved, right? And he wanted to be there with her. Yeah, it's important. And God honored that. You know, he could have said, you're going to die in Egypt, but I'll bring your family back. But he said to him, I'll bring you back. Dust and all. All right. Where did I leave off? Verse 28. And he sent Judah before him unto Joseph to direct his face unto Goshen, and they came into the land of Goshen. So Goshen is from everything that I've studied, Goshen was a very wet land, but it was not a farmed land. So everything they needed was there. By the way, Israel was like that. Israel was desolate, and it also had swamps. My grandfather was there in World War I. And what he said in World War I, Israel, the land around Jerusalem, there were some swamps. It was infested with mosquitoes, and you'd get sick if you got stuck down there. And then you get outside the swamp land, it's just desolate, dry wasteland. There's nothing that bloomed there. A few olive trees. There were a few other fruit-bearing trees, but there was nothing there. And now look at it, because the nation is back in their land. Wherever the Jews are, God blesses that land. And by the way, please don't misunderstand the United States of America's blessing. The United States of America was blessed by God because we were the only land open to the Jew to come, to own land, and to be productive in the land. Everywhere else around this world, they were put into slums and cities, slummy parts of cities, and they weren't allowed to own. And God blessed this land for that. I hope you realize that. So when they come into Goshen, it's got water, it's got land, it's got potential, but it has not been cultivated. It has not been, nothing has really been planted there and grown there. And so who saw the real promise in it? Joseph. And so what he's going to do, I'm going to let the cat out of the bag and you'll understand. He's going to tell his dad, I pulled out a lot for you, a place for you. It's called Goshen. And in this land of Goshen, you're going to have to put a lot of work in, but it is perfect for raising cattle. There is water there. Why is that important? Because they're going through a drought. There are natural springs in Goshen. It might be a swampland, but if you irrigate, you'll take the stagnant water, put it onto that dry ground, you're going to have fertile ground, and you're going to grow things in that land when the rest of Egypt is in a drought. That's important. And so the Egyptians didn't want anything to do with that land because the way they saw it, they saw the swamps, they saw the malaria, they saw sickness and disease. They didn't want that. You get that, right? Yeah. Okay, so let's keep going. So Joseph made ready his chariot and went up to meet Israel his father to Goshen and presented himself unto him. And he fell on his neck and wept on his neck a good while, which obviously he's been waiting a long time to see his dad. And remember, like Rod said last week, it was only 3 days' journey. He could have done this anytime, but it was on God's timing, right? And Israel said unto Joseph, now let me die, since I have seen thy face, because thou art yet alive. And Joseph said unto his brethren, and unto his father's house, I will go up and show Pharaoh, and say unto him, my brethren and my father's house, which were in the land of Canaan, are come unto me. Now stop right there. Now Joseph is about to give his father the greatest wisdom he could ever give him for the time that he's living in. But dad, being dad, is not going to listen to his son. And thankfully, because God is in this, it didn't cost him. But what Jacob did here, what Israel did here, could have cost him his life. Let me explain it. Watch what he did. And the men are shepherds, for their trade had been to feed cattle, and they have brought their flocks and their herds and all that they have. Do you see that? He said their trade had been to feed cattle. He said the men are shepherds now. Why? Because of the drought. But their trade is to feed cattle. There's a huge difference here. Shepherds are the scum of the earth, the lowest of the low class. They are worth nothing more than to be slaves in the ancient world. And it shall come to pass when Pharaoh shall call you and shall say, what is your occupation? Ye shall say, thy servant's trade hath been about cattle from our youth, even until now. Both we and also our fathers, that ye may dwell in the land of Goshen. For every shepherd is an abomination unto the Egyptians. When Pharaoh asks you what you do, for heaven's sake, don't tell him you make bricks, right? So when Pharaoh asks you, tell them you deal with cattle. It's not a lie. They had much cattle, but they were shepherds by trade. They just herded sheep. Stinky, smelly sheep, right? Stupid, blind sheep. And he's to the Egyptians. Remember last week we talked about how they separated, how Joseph was here, and then the Jews were over here as brethren. He put them by age, remember that? And then the other Egyptians sat over here. They wouldn't even sit close to a Jew. Well, had they known that those Jews were shepherds, they would have probably just taken them out and killed them because they're worthless. Here's something you got to understand about the ancient world. The ancient world did not want sheep and cattle mixing. As a matter of fact, there were range wars in the United States over this. Did you know that? There were serious range wars. People were killed over this. When a lot of the Jewish immigrants came across, and not only the Jewish immigrants, but a lot of the Italian immigrants and some of the Ukrainians and Russians and when those immigrants came over, they were shepherds. And so they naturally took sheep, and there was a land grab out west, and they took their herds of sheep out west, and many of them, their entire herds were slaughtered, and they were killed for trying to mix sheep with cattle. And the same as it was in the ancient world. You don't mix sheep and cattle. They had this understanding or this idea that if they drank from the same water, it would stunt the cattle's growth. If they ate where a sheep had relieved itself, it would cause the cattle to have disease and die. And that's not true, but that's what they believed. And hey, it don't matter how many facts you give somebody that don't want to believe you, they're not going to believe you, you understand? And so they viewed them as someone who wanted to harm them and hurt them. Remember, this is also a drought. And remember, the cattle are disappearing quickly. And so you're going to bring a bunch of sheep herders in here? Going to bring sheep in here? I don't think so. And so Joseph understood that and told his dad, whatever you do, don't tell him you're a shepherd. Guess what he does? Tells him he's a shepherd. Because some people just don't seem to learn. Let's keep going. Chapter 47. Everybody with me on 46? I know these two chapters are not very exciting, but they're important. They're in line here. Yes, sir. Okay. Because his brothers came back and told him. Yeah. Hey, were you awake last week? Hey, tell Kenny what last week was about. That's all right, Kenny. You probably aren't the only one. But then I'm trying to make you feel good. All right, you got it though, right? Okay. All right, chapter 47. Thank you for making it a little more exciting. Chapter 47. Now, to be honest with you, these last couple of chapters, we just can't make it very exciting. It's kind of dry, but it's very important that we grasp it. Chapter 47. Then Joseph came and told Pharaoh and said, my father and my brethren, the flocks and the herds, and all that they have are come out of the land of Canaan. And behold, they are in the land of Goshen. Stop right there. He said to Pharaoh, they're here. Thank you. It's kind of a thank you. And it's also an information. My family is here. Now, it's not that many of them. 70 of them all together. If you don't count Joseph and his family and Israel himself, it's only 66. That's not that many people. That's like what's in here today. So it's not that many people. And I put them over in Goshen. Nobody lives in Goshen. Don't nobody want to be in Goshen. So I just stuck them over in Goshen. They're separated apart. Why did he tell Pharaoh, and why did he pick a place that was separate? He told Pharaoh because it was only by Pharaoh's good graces that they were allowed to be there. And number two, why are they in Goshen? In Goshen is surrounded by some natural defenses. There's some natural cliffs, natural ridge lines, natural obstacles that kind of separate that particular piece of land from the rest of Egypt. Not only that, it's right on the border. Knowing full well they're not going to be there, but so long and they're going back home, it's easier to get out of there when you're on the border. Right? So there's some strategic things, there's some logical things, some strategic things, there's some protective things. There's a lot more to this probably than you and I can grasp because we didn't live then. We don't fully understand other than just what we read. But there's probably a lot of depth to that. It's also wisdom, isn't it? Because if you keep them separated and you have some natural barriers, that means Joseph also knew how corrupt Egypt was, didn't he? Remember, he had been enslaved by them. He had been in prison. So he knows how fickle the pharaohs are. And so he's going to keep his family separated in a land that nobody else wanted, keep them separated, and it will be away from prying eyes. It'll protect them, and it will also keep Egypt from impacting them. Now, in a few years, when there's a new Pharaoh and Joseph is gone and all of that, think about what happens. Then all of a sudden, we'll get there when we go into Exodus. The people start coming to Pharaoh. The wise men start coming to Pharaoh, and they're scared of the Jews because their numbers have increased so much. And Goshen has become its own little Jewish nation. And so in order then to gain control, because they were afraid they would rise up and take over Egypt. And so they started working a plan to enslave them, didn't they?
They didn't like how much they were prospering.
That's right. They were prospering in that land. There was natural stuff. All right, let's keep rolling. And he took some of his brethren, even 5 men, and presented them unto Pharaoh. Not all of them, just half. Just in case. Just in case. Joseph is not stupid. And yes, he's second in command, but he's only second in command. Pharaoh's still fickle. And we've seen that all the way through this book, haven't we? Yeah. So Pharaoh said unto his brethren, what is your occupation? And they said unto Pharaoh, thy servants are shepherds, both we and our father. They weren't too smart. So stop. Now, Israel's going to do the same dumb thing here in a little bit. So understand this. Are y'all still with me? So I think Joseph was smart. He only took 5 of his brethren because, hey, when these 5 idiots say the wrong thing, well, I still got a couple more brothers at home. Right? Maybe they'll learn this time. But nevertheless, they did exactly what he said not to do. They're older brothers. They're going to do the dumb thing. And they did. Now, they said moreover unto Pharaoh, for to sojourn in the land we are come, and for thy servants have no pasture for their flocks, for the famine is sore in the land of Canaan. Now therefore we pray thee, let thy servants dwell in the land of Goshen. We're asking you to let us and our sheep come up. Dumb. Pharaoh spake to Joseph, saying, thy father and thy brethren are come unto thee, and the land of Egypt is before thee. Thank God Pharaoh just let it roll. You know why Pharaoh let it roll? 2 reasons. This was a God thing. And 2, he loved Joseph. And he trusted Joseph not to do anything that was going to hurt Egypt. Plus, when he looked at Joseph and saw Joseph put him in Goshen, wise. Keep him away from everybody else. Right? So Pharaoh spoke and said unto Joseph, thy father and thy brethren are come unto thee. The land of Egypt is before thee. In the best of the land thy father and brethren to dwell, in the land of Goshen. Now notice that. He said in the best of the land. The best of the land is not the best of the land. Goshen is not the best of Egypt. But it was the best of the land for them. That was the best place for them. This is the context. Pharaoh was also acknowledging that Joseph was doing this on particular purpose, putting them into Goshen, separated from everyone else. And if thou knowest any men of the activity among them, then make them rulers over my cattle. If you have brothers that have good cattle experience, and they're blessed like you are, then by all means put them over my cattle, so that my cattle will grow. All Pharaoh was looking at was Joseph. And I got your brothers, and if your brothers are blessed like you are, by all means, let's put them to work. Right? And Joseph brought in Jacob his father and set him before Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Pharaoh said unto Jacob, how old art thou? And Jacob said, and I like the way he answered this, it sounds like something an old man would say. Jacob said unto Pharaoh, the days of the years of my pilgrimage are 130 years. Don't that sound like an old man? Few and evil have the days of the years of my life been. I have not, and have not attained unto the days of the years of the life of my fathers in the days of their pilgrimage. And that's true. His father and grandfather outlived him by a good many years, right? And Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from before Pharaoh. And Joseph placed his father and his brethren and gave them a possession in the land of Egypt, in the best of the land, in the land of Ramses. Not the best of all of it, but the best land for them. Please remember that, because in the Egyptian eyes, the best land was the city of Ramses, the city where Ramses was. The Egyptians had a different mindset. Even the farmers of Egypt had a different mindset. Their mindset was the best was where you were prominent, where you were wealthy, where people served you, where you were bowed down to. Y'all get that? And so they weren't looking at dirt. They weren't looking at raising crops and growing cattle. They were looking at rising above their circumstance to be able to sit in a big house and have servants. That was an Egyptian mindset. Isn't that a worldly mindset? That is a worldly mindset. Egypt is always a type or a picture of the world. And so that's what the world wants. The world wants the big house on the hill with people to serve them, and they got plenty of money to just sit around and eat what they want and do what they want and go where they want, when they want, and not be told to do anything they don't want to do. Am I right or wrong? Yeah, fancy, smancy stuff. The Jews weren't looking for that. The Jews were looking for a place where God would bless their crops and their cattle and their children. They wanted to grow in number, and they wanted their cattle and sheep to grow in number. So for them, success was totally different, a different mindset than the success of the Egyptian. So the best land for them was Goshen, but the best land in all of Egypt was where the great cities were, where the big buildings and the big temples and tabernacles and all of that stuff were. And so Joseph nourished his father and his brethren and his father's household with bread according to their families. And so Joseph is now providing everything for the family. This is awesome, y'all. This is a God thing. What those brothers meant for evil, God meant it for good. And Joseph is now in charge of his whole family. His whole family has to come to him for everything. Remember the dream he had? Well, this is fulfillment of that dream. They have to come to him for their very life's existence. And there was no bread, verse 13. There was no bread in all the land, for the famine was very sore. So the land of Egypt, all the land of Canaan fainted by reason of the famine. So we're going deeper in years into this thing. Joseph knew how long it was going to be, and Joseph knew how long it was going to take on the backside to get back right, didn't he? Okay? And so Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan for the corn which they bought, and Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. Let me stop. Now, we're not talking about paper money that somebody can print. We're talking about gold and silver. All right? Now, it may have been stamped with Pharaoh's face or whatever, but gold is still gold and silver is still silver, regardless of whose country is stamped in it. It's the weight of the metal. Always has been, always will be. And so what Joseph is doing is absolutely wise. He knows that the everyday man's coinage, that which was pressed into cheaper metals, that which was pressed into pottery, like a penny, be a pottery penny, that's worthless. It's worth nothing. So he's taking all the silver, all the gold, he's getting all of that first. Now, the famine keeps getting more and more severe. He's making Pharaoh a wealthy man. All the money and all the land, all the gold, the silver, the precious metals, all of that, it's now in the hand of Pharaoh. And then what happens? The famine's still going on. People still need to be fed. So Joseph said, verse 16, give your cattle, and I will give you for your cattle if money fail. So instead of giving me any kind of printed pennies and small coins, give me your gold and silver, your precious money first, then give me your cattle. By the way, Joseph planned, didn't he? He had more than enough grain to take care of them cattle and keep them good and fat. All for Pharaoh. And they brought their cattle unto Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for horses, and for flocks, and for the cattle of the herds, for the asses, and he fed them with bread for all their cattle of that year. And when that year was ended, they came unto him the second year, and said unto him, we will not hide it from my Lord how that our money is spent. My Lord also hath our herds of cattle. There is not aught left in the sight of my Lord, but our bodies and our lands. Now is where the real wealth of Egypt comes in. If you go back and you study, you're not going to find a lot about the Jews in Egypt, but you will find some. It is out there because it's the beginning of the real wealth of Egypt. Let's put it this way. You don't read but so much about the pilgrims, the settlers of our land, do you? You don't read but so much. Who do you start reading about? You start reading about the wealthy landowners, don't you? When the wealthy landowners, when you start getting men who have land and who have slaves and who own great amounts of property and cattle, then you start getting some history. And then after that, then they develop their governments. And then they come apart from England and establish their own government. And then we have a whole different history, don't we? Yeah. Who do you hear about in America today? You going to turn on the news and they talk about you on the news? The rich and wealthy is who they're going to talk about. Y'all get that, right? Understand this. If you backtrack history and you study it on the Bible, you will find that the Egyptians were a wealthy populace. Then all of a sudden there was something that transpired, and it just so happens to be this time frame. And all the wealth transferred from wealthy individuals to the pharaohs. This is that. This is that. Now, I want you to understand this. Egypt never looked at Joseph as a Jew. that was always hidden from them. They viewed him as second in command to Pharaoh, a prisoner who rose to prominence. Y'all with me? All right. So watch what happens here. And you're reading history. And you're reading history from God's perspective. And so they said, all we have is our bodies and our lands. Wherefore shall we die before thine eyes, both we and our land, buy us and our land for bread. And we and our land will be servants unto Pharaoh, and give us seed that we may live and not die, and the land be not desolate. So here it is. They gave Pharaoh all their gold and all their silver, their precious money. Then they gave Pharaoh all of their cattle. And then all of a sudden, Egypt, which was a government and a body of people, all of a sudden became a mighty, wealthy nation of authoritarian dictatorship. Just like that, overnight seemingly. Actually, we know it was 7 years. What they did was they said, we have nothing left. We're going to starve. We can be owned by you. Our land, you can have it all. You can have our bodies, you can have our land. We just don't want to die. Folks, I want you to know that's how governments get into power all the time. And that's how dictators get into power all the time. I want you to stop and look at what's going on in our country for just a minute. Just stop and think about this for a minute. Look at what's going on. We are so divided as a people, are we not? Now, I want you to know, I'm not a naysayer, I'm not a doomsdayer, but I am a realist. I know by reading, unless we're Babylon, New Babylon that's burning in the book of Revelation, which is a stretch, I don't see our nation there. Our nation is going to go by the wayside somewhere. When that happens, God has blessed this land. And God has blessed us as a people because we were a people for God. We were a people who protected God's people, always have been. We were a people who fought against the enemies of Israel. Did you know that? The Marine Corps anthem, from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. And we defended them. We protected them. And we're turning our back on them. Now, we've already accepted homosexual marriage, that is the death nail in a coffin of a culture. But now if we turn our backs on Israel because of money, because we're more worried about our dollar than we are God, we're in trouble. We're in trouble. And it may not seem like it's going that way, but folks, let me tell you, it keeps going back and forth. And we're in a very precarious position as a nation. And if this nation falls, this nation will be divided up into smaller nations, manageable nations. And we will not have the freedoms we have right now. And if you look at our population, you look at the last election, you look at our population, we have half of our population that doesn't want freedom at all anymore. And that ought to scare you. Shouldn't it? I want freedom. I want to be free to make choices. I want to be free to make mistakes. But when you all of a sudden find yourself in a position where you're hungry and you're thirsty and your kids are hungry, people just naturally will give themselves as slaves to those who have it. And that's what scares me the most about where we are in America. You cut off people's cell phones, they'll do anything to get their cell phones back. You cut off their water and their food, they'll do anything to get that food back. They'll sell themselves and their children. We've already sold our children and grandchildren out for nicer houses and cars and lands. We've put them in debt they can never repay. Come now, am I right? We're in a very scary place. So when we read this, cut these people some slack, okay? Please cut them some slack. They did not have any options. They had no welfare system. All they had was what they were allowed to have by the ruling class And then now, the ruling class can't protect them. Folks, one of these days, that little building up the street is going to be out of money. And there's going to be a lot of people come knocking on your door and telling you they deserve what you have, and you need to give it to them, or they're going to hurt you. And it's time to eliminate them from the gene pool. But most Americans don't have the guts to do that. Let's be honest. That's where we are. It's a scary place. Enough about all that. Let me finish this chapter. So, what verse was I in? 20. And Joseph bought all the land of Egypt. Now notice that. Joseph knew what he was doing. I've had people say, doesn't that make Joseph evil? No. No. He's smart and he's protecting his family. He's in a place to protect his family, and he's protecting his family. That's wise. I think Joseph knows full well that soon and very soon these people are going to be the enemies of his family. Don't you? You want to know how I know that? Because surely Abraham told it to Isaac, and surely Isaac told it to Jacob, and surely Jacob told it to his boys. You're going to be enslaved for 400 years. Let's keep going. Joseph brought all the land of Egypt and for Pharaoh, and for the Egyptians sold every man, that's lottie-dottie, everybody, his field, because the famine prevailed over them. So the land became Pharaoh's. And as for the people, he removed them to cities. Notice that. Once the people are enslaved, you have no rights. The land belongs to somebody else, and the landowner has the right to move you wherever he sees fit to move you. Remember back here, all we want is that you can buy our land. Just give us land for our bread, and our land will be servants unto you. What they said to start with was, we'll stay here and farm the land. We want to stay home, but just you can have our land and us. We'll work our land. Well, guess what? I'll give you bread, but next year you're gone. And you're going to go where I tell you to go. You're going to have to give up your land because it ain't your land anymore. Imagine if that happened to you and I right now, and all of a sudden now, all that money we've been paying all them years on them houses we got, and just so that we can fill our bellies and so that our children don't starve to death, we give it and ourselves to the government. And then, lo and behold, we think because the government allows us to stay there for a few months, we're good to go. And then the trucks start rolling in. What are you going to do? It's serious business, y'all. Learn from the Bible. Everything in this book is for us to learn from. All right, now I don't want y'all going home watching football depressed and stuff. So let me finish this chapter. As for the people, he removed them to cities from one end of the borders to Egypt to the other end and thereof. So he moved everybody around. He took them away from their homes and their families. He separated families. He separated them from what's familiar. Once you're away from your family and you're away from your home and you're someplace that you don't know what's across the hill, you're going to do what the government says do. And so he removed them. Verse 22, and the land of the priest bought he not, for the priest had a portion assigned to them of Pharaoh. Not Jewish priests, we're talking about Egyptian priests, those wise men. And did eat their portion which Pharaoh gave them, wherefore they sold not their lands. Religion became popular and religion became profitable. Looky here. Then Joseph said unto the people, behold, I have bought you this day and your land for Pharaoh. Lo, here is seed for you, and you shall sow the land. And it shall come to pass in the increase that ye shall give a fifth part unto Pharaoh, and 4 parts shall be your own. So 1/5 goes to Pharaoh, 4 parts you keep yourself. Sounds pretty good to start with. It's a socialist regime, I want you to know that. shall be your own, and for the seed of the field, and for your food, and for them of your household, and for food for your little ones. And they said, Thou hast saved our lives. Let us find grace in the sight of my Lord, and we will be Pharaoh's servants. Learn from that, people. Learn the lesson the Bible is teaching right here. And Joseph made it a law over the land of Egypt unto this day, unto the day of the writing of the Scripture, that Pharaoh should have the fifth part, except the land of the priests only, which became not Pharaoh's. And Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt in the country of Goshen, and they had possessions therein, and grew and multiplied exceedingly. And Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So the whole age of Jacob was 147 years. And the time drew nigh that Israel must die. And he called his sons and said unto him, If now I have found grace in thy sight, put, I pray thee, thy hand under my thigh. And remember, we talked about that way back when. Putting the hand under the thigh, you're showing you have no weapon formed against them. You are trusting them. And this is all, you're opening yourself up, right? All of that stuff we learned about way back when. And deal kindly and truly with me. Bury me not, I pray thee, in Egypt. But I will lie with my fathers, and thou shalt carry me out of Egypt, and bury me in their burying place. And he said, I will do as thou hast said. And he said, Swear unto me. And he sware unto him, and Israel bowed himself upon the bed's head. So we'll start there next week. So he's dying, and he wants them to promise they will get him out of there and bury him with Rebekah.